Good morning. This is Tom Alexander. It is Tuesday, August 17th. It is 8:23 a.m. Eastern Time in the U.S. An interesting situation developing. This is gonna be longer than most of our pre-markets because I think for once, typically day to day, there's not much to say from day to day. There's a lot to say now. We came into the Globex session sort of in a binary situation where the market had to tip its hand one way or the other. And it seems like we may have tipped the hand, and now something is different this time, perhaps. I'm going to run through all four of the indices that we trade. I just happen to have the Russell up first. So I'm going to show this chart. Now, the annotations from this are from the report that I put out last weekend. And specifically now you can see as I'm recording this, we're starting to trade below the recent very two-sided trade and get into, below about 2164, then you're very likely to test this area down here, test or get through it. Remember, this is a multi-month balance area, So if the Russell does indeed over the next few days trade below this area, it could really trade a lot lower than I think a lot of people believe at this point in time. And what would invalidate that now would be a close above the high of the 6th. And secondarily now, you have conviction over the past 2 or 3 days here. So this would be an initial area to watch. If we're going to trade sharply lower, if this is the beginning of some sort of initiative move, really this area right in here should hold. I don't like to put a lot of stuff on the chart, but in this particular instance, I think it's important. So this is the level, this 2214, 2233 level I would really watch very carefully, and I would be favoring short trades against this area in the Russell. There are a number of ways to trade shorts. You don't have to just trade futures contracts. You can construct option trades. You can use leveraged ETFs, etc. But I would be favoring shorts against this area at this point in time. I think that's a great reward to risk situation. All right, let's look at the Nasdaq. Now the NQ, you can see it's sitting on its session lows as I'm recording this. Now I said last night in the video I did that if this is bullish and we're going to go to new highs, then you shouldn't retrace more than much more than 50%. Well, we're doing that in the other indices, which I'm going to show in a minute. The NQ is holding up at this point in time. But what I'm beginning to think is going to happen, and this is a guess, we read this in real time. I think, I wouldn't be surprised to see a round trip now. That's what I suggested last night. If we didn't see some sort of balance and we started to see a lot of weakness against yesterday's ramp levitation, that it would bring yesterday's entire range into play. And I think we're seeing that. Let's go to, now if you look at the YM and the ES, here's the ES, here's the YM. Both are trading below the halfway point of yesterday's range. That brings into play yesterday's lows. So if we get below yesterday's lows, it opens up all sorts of things. Let's look at the profile view of these markets. Okay, this is the cash Dow. And you can see the August range really sort of expanded in the past several days. Now you have a very, very immature structure. You don't have that Gaussian looking node. I'm stuck here. Let me unstick this. You can see here, you don't have that Gaussian node that is the mode of the structure that you always end up in a mature profile. Now, sometimes, it's not perfectly Gaussian, but you do have that high volume node. And now, my point here is that you don't have an obvious structure that has formed of value. So that opens up rotation through this range. If we were to now, this is the cash market. If we were to trade above this level, that would be an extension of the range. But my point is, this entire range for August is really still in play from an auction market perspective, and applying that worldview onto the market profile graph. Let's take a look at, let me find the S&P. Well, here's the NDX, so we'll take a look at it. Now, the NDX actually has a more prototypical Gaussian shape working, and if we split this out, this is yesterday's range, and it encompasses probably 70% of the entire auction for August. So obviously the extremes of this range are important to the profile graph view of the August auction. And again, this is the cash chart. Let's look at, here's the Dow. And now obviously it has a similar structure as the ES. So the same comments apply, and then we'll look at the Russell, the RUT. And this is an annotation from the chart over the weekend. Here's the high volume node from this multi-month structure. We're now trading below that high volume node, and we're not that far from the lows of the August auction. Now, the other piece of this puzzle that we're going to be watching very, very carefully will be breadth. And I talked about this last night, and I thought that we might see some backing and filling in here that would hold into the upper, say, just quarter of this range, and then we go ripping higher, and then you reset this. And I also mentioned that would not erase the divergences on an intermediate to longer term basis up here, but it might reset this, and we might have a bullish tenor for a few days at least. Well, now it looks like we're going to have something that hasn't happened in quite a while. And specifically, if you look at breadth down here, when we reach these lows or close to these lows recently, and this is typical of the price breadth relationship in a bull trend, when you reach these lows, you would get a bungee jump immediately. Well, we had those, had this odd situation yesterday where the market went straight up for most of the day. Breadth closed very negative. Now we're going to see what we bring into play now is to see if we get another breadth contraction down around negative 2,000. And they're all sort of if and or buts if this happens based on where we are, based on market structure. And I don't want to get too deep in the weeds there, but it will be an interesting thing to watch, especially today and moving forward into this week. Okay, guys, have a wonderful day. I'll see you in the live trade room.